Hey everyone, welcome to another episode on Beyond Biz. And today I'm delighted to have one of my future incoming classmates at Harvard with me, Shreyas. So Shreyas has had the opportunity to work as a management consultant at BCG, as well as work in strategy and product roles in a fast-growing startup, Oyo Rooms. I don't know how often or till how long I can call Oyo still a startup, but it's defined as, let's say, Uber for hotels. And individuals who own hotels can sign up here, and Oyo promises them standardized services to the hotel. So that's a bit about Oyo. And he's going to join, as I mentioned, HBS for an MBA. So, hey, Shresh, glad to have you. Thanks for doing this.
Hey Abhijay, thanks for inviting me. It's wonderful being here. I'd love to talk more about my journey and anything that the viewers would want to know.
Yes. So one thing which I have at the top of my mind right now is that, Oyo has had this amazing journey during, coming out of the pandemic, and it's such a fast growing startup. So you're going to be now going back to academia, right, at HBS. So are you going to miss, first of all, working in such an environment at Oyo?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'm definitely going to miss working at Oyo because the nature of work is really fast paced over here. There's a new challenge and new initiatives being launched, every few days, every few weeks. So I just love the, pace at which the work happens, the variety of,
Right.
roles that I have had the opportunity to take up during my stint here. So I'll definitely
Absolutely.
miss that. But on the other hand, I'm also looking forward to, new opportunities, new challenges. So a bit excited about that as well.
Likewise, absolutely. Actually, the one major question which I have, and I think a lot of viewers will also have that, right? Because you moved from being a management consultant to, joining a strategy and product role now at Oyo. So what was the thinking behind that decision? Like, why did you move on from a management consultant role?
Yeah. So I think that's a good question because I think it's a little unconventional for people to switch from consulting to startup roles. But for me, I think after working 1.5 years at the BCG, I realized that I really loved working across with the various industries. I really valued the exposure I got over there. But at the end of the day, after let's say 1.5 years, I realized that I wasn't very comfortable with the transient nature of the work because at the end of the day, you keep rolling on and off various projects. Every few months, you get onto a new project, new context, new stakeholders to deal with,
Right.
new scenarios. So while that was exciting, but at the same time, I felt that because of this transient nature of the work, um, I couldn't see the projects that I am working on. A lot of times I couldn't see the projects that I was working on up to fruition, right?
Right.
So that was a fundamental thing that I wasn't comfortable with. But when I started looking out, I realized that Oyo is a really exciting opportunity. It's a fast growing It was a fast growing startup at that point. Like, it is still fast growing, but not
Yes.
sure if you call it a startup anymore.
Right.
But yeah, it was an exciting space at that point in time. And the plus point about Oyo was that there were a lot of people, the type of people and the were quite similar in both of these companies. Oyo had a lot of ex consultants working there
Right.
as well. So I was excited to, work over there because I had, I was potentially solving the uh, points that I had discomfort with while at BCG. But then at the same time, I was also working with the same kind of people, with the same rigor, the same kind of expectations. So
Right.
I realized that I'm not compromising on my learning or the
Right.
interesting projects I'm going to work on. But at the same
Yeah.
time, also looking for working on more long-term projects, seeing things from conception to delivering
Yeah.
impact. So I think that was
Right.
an excellent decision for me.
Okay, yeah, totally makes sense. In terms of, when you are in such a growing startup, you see the impact quite, it's very easy to, see that impact in front of you. So that totally relate to that. Just maybe a follow-up question to that, and I think maybe I know your answer, but so in terms of excitement, given that, you're working across maybe different cases, let's say at in your management consulting role, what was more exciting for you? Like, having that excitement of switching, or was it, did you find it more exciting to work in a fast growing startup?
I think that's a tough question for me to answer.
Okay.
But if you press me to choose one, I think I would choose my role at Oyo. I think that was, uh, you know, significantly, that was a bit more exciting. Got to, work and, shape an emerging industry in India. So I think
Right.
that end of the day was a little bit more challenging. I got the opportunity to, as I said, shape a fast evolving business and industry. So that was really a bit more exciting than my time at
Sure.
BCG. But
Sure.
yeah, I think, yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, totally, totally. So we talked about a little bit of an introduction, right? So now how this would be structured is we'll talk a little bit about careers at OYO, and then we'll talk about the MBA application advice, MBA experience, and then close with the fun section, right? So let's move on to now the careers section of it. So can you tell us a little bit about, what was your last role at OYO? Like if you had to describe one day in that life, what would that entail?
Sure. Yeah. So just taking a step back, by when I joined OYO, I joined as part of the strategy team, and eventually I pivoted into product management. So while I was working as a product manager at OYO, my day-to-day work involved, I was part of the merchant revenue management team. So essentially, our responsibility was to build new products for our hotel owners so that they could grow their revenue, they could grow their business, and make it easier for them to, you know, get more customers and grow their business. So that was my job description in a nutshell. So, um, you know, why, while I was there, I think the latest projects that I was working on, one of the more interesting projects was I was trying to work on on streamlining the self onboarding product for OYO. Basically, what that means is, without, traditionally, whenever a new hotel wanted to sign up with OYO, there was a lot of operational aspects to it as well, because you would have to sign contracts. People from the operations teams would have to go and meet the owners,
Right.
uh, ensure that the hotel is up to the same standards as the rest of the hotels on the platform, etc. So we were working on streamlining the process so that hotel owners can onboard onto our platform on their own without any intervention from anyone from the
Right.
operations. So I think that was an exciting project for me. So yeah, I think, yeah, that was my time at OYO.
Okay. And yeah, that sounds very, promising, given that so many of like the space at which OYO was growing, maybe this was really crucial for them to have to minimize this time for onboarding the new hotels, right? So I think it really would have been quite exciting.
Yeah,
So
adding to that, actually,
yeah.
yes, yeah, I think just one point I would add to that is that the pandemic made it really difficult for OYO to manage their costs as well as ensure that we keep growing. So
Right.
so it was very crucial to adopt a more tech first approach and ensure that we eliminate as much manual intervention as possible from the entire process at each touch point. So I think it
Right.
was motivated by that as well.
Absolutely. Like we talk about, actually, I was going to ask you about the same, about the pandemic impact, because of course the hospitality and the tourism industries have probably been the most impacted by the pandemic, right? So what were some of the things that, or some of the strategies that OYO followed to stay afloat, and not only stay afloat, but they emerged probably out as winners out of the pandemic. So how was that at OYO? Like, what are the discussions like then in the company, and maybe whatever you can share with us?
Sure. Initially when the pandemic did happen, pandemic happened time early 20, like around April 2020. So it was a very chaotic point at that time because we didn't know, what was going on. We just getting in as much information as we can about what's happening in the industry and how do you manage your own workforce, etc. So it was a challenging time for the business as well as the industry as a whole.
Yeah.
But in the initial times when we the focus was more around how do we given that business is very low and it's just there's hardly any new customers that are coming in and staying in hotels and traveling at that point in time. The focus was more on how do we optimize the cash flow that the company is getting. Now, given that very few customers are traveling and staying at hotels, whatever customers do travel, we needed to ensure that our hotel partners as well as OYO get a good amount of cash flow through those
Right.
those limited bookings that do come up, right? So OYO operates on a commission model where around 30% or so is the commission, that's the revenue that's shared between the customer, between OYO as well as the hotel owners, right?
Right.
So
Right.
focus was on how do we ensure that we get a good mix of prepaid bookings as well as paid hotel bookings to basically optimize the cash flow for the company as well as our hotel partners.
Right.
Then that was a major part of the initial pandemic. As first wave of lockdowns and started easing up, people started traveling more. We focused a lot on trying to understand what the new customer, what's the evolving mindset of the customers. What will it take for our customers to feel more confident in staying with us? So that was a huge part of our work at that point in time. We did a very extensive customer survey to understand, what are our customers' concerns, what are they looking for, what can we do to give them more confidence, and get them to make OYO the first choice if they have to travel for whatever reason, right? So that was our focus at that point in time. I think that talking to all of these customers gave us a lot of insights into what into what they're expecting and what can we do as a company.
Right.
So that led to a few very interesting initiatives. Few of them were industry first, which also I as I recollect, some of the competitors also try to replicate similar initiatives as we did. Then after this, we also there was another aspect of another project that we were working on, was how do we utilize our unoccupied inventory. Basically, there were so many hotel rooms that are basically empty. Almost all hotels were running at very, very low occupancy, right? So how do we use these how do we use this inventory for the for the most benefit? So there was this project that we were working on in terms of utilizing this unoccupied inventory to acquire new customers for the company. So that was a really interesting project for me, because that really helped us gain more customers during the pandemic. And at the same time, once the pandemic started easing up, people started traveling more. Not only did we gain a lot of new customers, but then we also were able to differentiate us from the operators in the market. So I think that those were a few really interesting projects that I had the opportunity to work on.
Very interesting. Quick follow up to that. So if there were, let's say, unutilized spaces, you were using it for the partners, you said, right? Like, so how was that? How was that being used, given that it was a pandemic? So was a specialized use case for them, or?
Yeah. So what we try to do is essentially we try to sell off. We opened up the unutilized inventory at very low prices, where part of the discount was funded by OYO and partly it was funded by the hotel owners. Essentially, OYO stopped taking any commission on these bookings, and part of that, and likewise the hotel owners also funded part of the discount. So effectively, customers could, new customers specifically could book hotel rooms for as low as 400-500 rupees a night.
So
that's really low compared to that's almost 50% of the price that we normally sell at. So if someone has to travel if someone had to travel in these difficult times, I think because of our really attractive pricing, we automatically became the first choice for our for customers who have never stayed with us before.
Right. No, totally makes sense. And just to get an idea of when you're working at such a fast growing startup, and that's as a PM, you have a new idea. So what's that process like, from having that initial idea and to actually implementing it? So how does that process look like at OYO?
Yeah. So OYO, operates in a very fast-paced manner. I think the motto is just, I think the mentality is just that just launch and fail fast, basically.
Hmm.
If there's any idea and anything that we want to implement, rather than spending a huge amount of manpower in developing and building new products for this idea and testing waters,
Hmm.
the bias was on in terms of, what do we do to establish a proof of concept? Can we launch an MVP really quickly
Hmm.
and get initial customer feedback and see if this idea actually holds any water? So,
Right.
you know, for any new idea, any new product that was conceived, the focus was first on, just implementing any kind of minimum viable product or an MVP to get some feedback, and then keep iterating on what can we improve better, and then eventually, spending the company's resources in terms of manpower and developing these products
Got it.
into fledged experiences for our customers.
Yeah, totally makes sense. So can you just tell us some of the skills, because you had this, you moved on from the management consulting space. So what were some of the skills that you felt like were transferable from a management consultant role? And what are some of the skills which you felt, no, the PM role, I really need to learn these new skills?
Yeah. So I think, when I was a consultant, I was basically one of the associates at BCG. As an associate, the bias is heavy on problem solving, doing analysis, and those kind of things, right? So I think that's definitely a very strong skill set that was transferable from my role at BCG to my initial role at OYO, and eventually in product management as well. There's a and I think, and to be frank, I think having strong problem solving skills is necessity for any kind of job that you can take up. That's almost a prerequisite for anything. So I think that was one transferable skill set, but the things that I had to develop even more were, I think, at the top of my mind, I think the one skill set that I had to really develop was stakeholder management, because
Right.
as a manager, you essentially can't really command anyone to help you on a particular idea or get things done. You need to understand how to something that I like to call as soft influence, right?
Right.
You can't just pull hierarchy or anything of that sort to get your work done. Rather, you
Absolutely.
talk about reason. You need to understand your stakeholders much better, and then do a good job in convincing them as to what you're working on makes a lot of sense and why they should prioritize um, the thing that you want to work on over anything else. So that was definitely one thing that I had to learn. I think I'm still learning that, but
Definitely. Yeah, I can
that's
also relate to that because I'm also in a similar product manager, product owner role at my firm. And sometimes it's very hard to tell no to people. And how do you manage the different stakeholders is a big part of this role, right? So totally relate to your experience. Awesome. That's I think gives a lot of insights into, Oyo. Thanks for sharing, and also, about these skills. Let's now move on about the MBA experience. I think a lot of the people in the audience are interested to apply to a business school. So tell us about, like, your application journey in terms of what schools did you apply to, and if you, for example, would recommend somebody to work with a consultant. I think that's a very common question aspirants have.
Yeah. So yeah, answering your first question, I think the schools that I applied to were HBS, Wharton, Columbia, and MIT. I was fortunate enough to get through in HBS and Wharton, but ultimately I chose HBS, and I'm going to join there in this August along with you. So that's that. And coming to the second part of the question, would I recommend working with a consultant? I think from my perspective, I think it makes a lot of sense working with a consultant. It's because if you're applying to one of these top B schools, as you and our viewers would know, that it's super competitive out there, right?
Yes.
And in that kind of an environment, you need the best, the maximum help that you can get uh, to make yourself stand out among the crowd.
Right.
And where a consultant steps in, because of course a consultant can't help you change your work experience and your story and your experiences so far, but a consultant can help you polish those stories and help you communicate those stories more effectively, before the admissions committee. And another thing that I feel that a consultant does very well is that some of the good consultants know the various nuances about each B school. They understand what does each B school look for, what are their biases, how do they operate, what do they think about,
True.
what kind of stories do they like to hear, and so on, right?
Yeah.
So just helps you get some more perspective. Of course, like when you are an applicant, there's only so much research that you can do. Whereas a consultant, if it's their bread and butter for the last few years,
Yeah.
there's a lot of research and a lot of insight that they have, which you can just leverage right off the bat.
Yeah, I would second that. And in terms of because of course you went through and you're joining HPS. So what part of your career journey do you think that HPS particularly liked? I mean, it's very hard to answer this, I know, because it's really a black box. But when you talked about which part of your journey which you found was the most impactful, let's say, according to you.
Okay. I think gauging by my interview with the HBS admissions committee, I think two things that really stand out. I like that. That's my perspective. Might be wrong, but in my mind, I think two things that stood out for me was one, that I decided to switch from a consulting career to a fast-growing startup in India. That was probably a decision that was not uh, very popular, or it's not a very common decision that people take. That was one thing that really fascinated my interviewer. Like, she wanted to know more about why I took that decision, what was my rationale, and eventually, in retrospect, how did that decision turn out to be. And secondly, after moving to OYO, given that the world was facing an unprecedented situation, which during the pandemic, uh, hospitality as an industry was one that was probably the most severely affected industry. And I was lucky to be at the right place at the right time, uh, to work on interesting projects that helped the company stay afloat and even thrive during the pandemic. So I had a lot of stories with that experience as well. I think these two things made me stand out, made me stand out compared to probably the other candidates, and helped me with my application. That's what I anticipate, at least.
Right. So, we have this open-ended HPS essay, right? Like, what more would you like the admissions committee to know? So would you want to share a little bit about, maybe not the exact stories, but what was your theme around which you wrote yours? Like, what was that about?
Yeah. So a large part of my essay was around, the sense of gratitude that I have in my life. So to give you a little bit more context, my father actually, in his childhood, he came from a relatively humble background, but through his hard work and luck as well, he made his way out of a small town to Mumbai, which is like the financial capital of India. And uh, you know in his career, he was largely successful. Because of that, I got a lot of privilege in my life. I compared to other people, and let's say if I compare myself with uh, you know myself uh, with kids of my father's peers kids, right? If I compare them, well, I think I grew up with relatively a lot more privilege. I got better schooling, I got better opportunities. And that was what I talked about, that I feel a lot of gratitude uh, that I got all of these opportunities. And um, there's in all of this, there's nothing major that I did. It was just the circumstances that I was in. And additionally, in throughout my life, I've been lucky to have really good mentors at crucial junctures in my life, and I'm really indebted to that as well. So I talked about those experiences and how all of these things help me shape my career and my personality, and brought me to the place I am today, where I am today. So mostly around that.
I mean, I love the fact how simple and important things make such an essential part of the essay, right? Like people may always think I should talk about something very fancy, but you talked about something like gratitude, which maybe many people take, for granted, let's say, and you actually delve deep into that. So that's some insight for the audience to know, to maybe think about what they would like to write. But that's super helpful. Thanks for sharing. So what advice would you have? Now people are going to be applying again this in this application cycle. So do you have any tips in terms of which you'd like to share? One tip, two tips. I mean, how many ever you feel comfortable sharing with the audience.
Sure, sure. I think it's a little difficult for me to give tips because, in all honesty, I really don't have a blueprint in my mind as to how I was able to, secure this admission that I wanted. But, a few points that do come to my mind are, it really helps to take some time out, once you're done with your GMAT and all of those things, and you're sitting down to write your essays, I think it really helps to take some time out to introspect and, just look back and connect the dots from your life experiences so far, and try to identify, what are the common themes in your life. Because, for example, like I talked about gratitude, this was something I realized. Well, I took some time off from work. I took a sabbatical from work for a few to, just calm my mind, focus on my MBA applications, and,
Yeah.
just stay away from the stress of day-to-day work for some time. And that's where during that period of introspection, that is where I came across I realized a few incidences in my life that have really influenced the person I am today. So yeah, I think that, so one point would definitely be, just take some time out to introspect. If you need to take some time off from work, see, and, talk to talk to your peers at your work, see if you can make that happen. Secondly, I think what also matters is, just try to be more genuine, and in terms of what you're presenting in your essays. Because of course, uh, from the outside, it seems like, to get into a good B school, you need to have a really fancy story for you to stand out and, impress the adcom. But I think that, I read it somewhere on someone else's blog, and I think that really resonated with me, was that you can think of the adcom as the adcom is essentially are essentially experts at sniffing out fake uh, fake stories, right?
Right.
So they've been doing this year in, year out. They've been screening so many candidates, and, a small fraction of them actually eventually get through and get admission in the respective colleges, right? So they're expert at sniffing out lies. So it make and hence, if you try to lie, if you try to sound more fancy and impactful than what you really did, I think it's going to come through sooner or later, either in your essay or during your interviews or somewhere else in your application process.
Right.
It just helps to be more genuine. So if I just were to summarize, I think there are 2 points. One is take some time out to introspect. The other one is be as genuine as you can.
Awesome. These are really, really helpful tips. Thanks, Shreyas, for sharing. So is there anything that you would do differently where you apply again? Let's say this, you had to apply to one application cycle this year. So would you do anything differently?
I think one thing that I would do differently is that I during my HBS interview, I was really underconfident, and I think that, once I was done with the interview, I knew for sure that, I just need to focus on other B schools, because HBS, I'm not getting into HBS at any cost, given how my interview just went. So I really beat myself up and was really disappointed with myself, with how the interview went. But then I think, so I think that's one thing that I would love to do differently. But having said that, I'm just really glad that, things eventually turned out in my favor, and
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can relate to that as well, because after the waiting period from the interview till the decisions are out, your mind is always thinking about things you could have said better, or things you could have spoken about in the essay. But totally relate to that. So thanks for sharing. Let's shift gears and talk a little bit about like fun things, right? So So tell us about life outside work at Oyo, right? So what are the things you do at your work which are fun, and maybe, of course, work is also fun, but outside work, what do you do for fun?
So outside work, uh, you know, uh, I had a really good friendship with a lot of my peers who I used to work with day in day out, and as part of fun activities, we used to, once we were done with the work day, we used to go in to someone or the other's home to just party and chill for a bit before heading back to our own homes. So I
Right.
really relish those memories back from when I was working at Oyo, and the friendship that I developed at that point in time was so strong. I'm still connected with my friends from Oyo. Like every week, almost every week or every alternate week, I'm always connecting with someone or the other. Uh, and we're still really connected because of all of
Awesome.
these fun activities that we did. So yeah.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. But was it possible during the pandemic though, given everything was shut?
Yeah, so we used to find time, a couple of my closest friends at work. One, at times when we were not during meetings, we
Yeah.
would get on a Google Hangout and just generally
Right.
just talk about and complain about what's happening at work, whatever
Right.
it was
Right. Right.
about, and
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
was a safe space for us to vent out. So that really helped a lot. And a lot a few of my friends, we had this unsaid rapport that when if few of my like if I happen to be in a meeting where a friend of mine is also present, we would, at the end of the meeting, by while one by one everyone else would drop off from the call, my friends and I,
Yeah.
we would just stay on the call because it was an unsaid rule that we would just stay back during the meeting
Yeah.
and just talk to each other about
Right.
how the meeting went and just generally
Yeah.
complain and vent out whatever.
Interesting.
what-
Interesting.
that really
Very
helped
cool.
me sail
Yeah.
through the pandemic period.
Yeah, pandemic really changed a lot of the ways we interacted, right? Earlier we were having these conversations in person, and then now I have these video calls. Anyway, so I want to know one more thing. I was very excited to know about this one. Like, so when you opened the on the day the results came, right, for HPS, and you saw that an update has been posted to your application, and so what was the first reaction, either of yours or your family, whoever was there around you, when you saw that?
Yeah, so I was outside with a few friends, and I knew for a fact, I knew that my decision is going to come out
Yeah.
at that particular time. But then I chose to be out of the house, just be with my friend, because irrespective of what the decision came out,
Yeah.
I just want to let some steam out, chill and relax with a few friends. If it was in my favor, then all the more reason to celebrate. But
Right.
even if it wasn't, I'd at least have a good time with friends and then come back home and not feel disappointed. So that's what I had planned. The at
Yeah.
the hour of when the results were expected. But the moment I checked my results, the first person I called, I basically called up my brother and my parents, told them about the news. They were over the moon. Uh,
Yeah.
like my parents at some level just knew that they had this innate confidence in them. We always
Yeah.
knew that it's going to turn out. I think that's just how parents are. They're really optimistic about
Absolutely. Yes. If you tell them that, yeah, we got into Harvard, they're like, yeah, we expected to get into Harvard. So we always believed in you. So, but that emotion I can never forget. Anyway, I can also relate that day I can never forget of my life as well. But thank you for sharing for your story. So given that you've had quite an unconventional journey making this transition from management consulting to moving to a startup, maybe a lot of people want to reach out to you. So what do you think is the best way for them to connect with you?
Yeah, sure. I think the best way to reach out to me is either through LinkedIn, or you can drop me an email as well. That would be the best way to reach out to me. I'm fairly active on online, so
Sure.
I think that would
Awesome.
be great.
So I'll pin up your LinkedIn, and if you want also your email, so that they can reach out to you if they have. Because I think a lot of questions may come in, especially regarding this application. But thanks, Shreyash, for taking out the time and doing this. I hope it helps a lot of applicants who are either want to transition from consulting to product roles, or are applying for an MBA. I just hope it helps everyone. And thanks to you for volunteering your time. It really means, I think, to a lot of us. So thanks for that. Thanks everybody for viewing, and we'll see you all the next time. Thanks, Shreyash. Bye.